I just
Yeah, as soon as those cameras start, it's like
awesome.
people.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're very happy to be back with Louise Dinsmore. She's the founder of Partners in Philanthropy and a local advocate for. Well, I'll let you describe it. What do you advocate for, Louise?
I'm a local advocate for responsible taxpayer spending and responsible public spending. I really feel strongly that taxpayers need to be involved, aware, engaged, informed in how their tax dollars are spent in their local towns, their cities, their municipalities, and in their school districts.
Transparency. And
yes.
Why is that such an issue for people in government?
I think for a long time, people in government haven't had a lot of oversight by people like me. But people that are really sort of examining agendas, attachments to the agendas, information that is out there, and they haven't really been, scrutinized in the past. And I think people have to start getting more involved and engaged to really sort of peel the layers of the onion to understand how their tax dollars are being spent. And I would submit to you that it's not great the way the money is being spent.
So you're being kind, but what got you started? How did you become so interested? And
You stole my question. Come on.
Okay, go ahead.
No. That was my question.
Oh.
That's the point.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
When did the epiphany? Was it gradual? Just one event? What was it?
So I've always been involved in government and politics. I was a political science major in college. I went to PC, and
Is that what brought you to Rhode Island?
Yes. So I'm originally from Connecticut. And when I was 12 years old, I saw Ronald Reagan speak on my street.
Ronnie.
When he was running for president in 1980. And I was just, at that age, so inspired by his message, by the way he communicated with the people, that he was an unabashed cheerleader for the United States at a time when our hostages were, taken by Iran, and that he gave people hope, and he was very inspiring to me. So, fast forward, when I went to college, I wanted to be in, a political science major. And my parents were like, you want to be what major? I said, political science major. Ronald Reagan. He's my, my hero, my political hero. So
Ronnie.
I love him. Great. Just back when things were sane in politics, and when we had respect for each other. So I was a political science major. When I was in college, there was a gentleman that was running for Congress in Rhode Island, Ron Makeley, and he was running against Fred St. Germain, who was an 18-year incumbent and chairman of the House Banking Committee, just a very powerful congressman. And Ron came to Providence College and was asking for volunteers, and he said, I need somebody to help with my campaign in the city of Providence. And, I raised my hand and I said, oh, I'd be delighted to help you. Tell me where you want us to put up signs, in Providence, if you want us to do phone banking, want us to stuff a mailing, whatever. So never, ever thought that he was going to win. And lo and behold, he beats Fred St. Germain. And so Ron gets elected to Congress, and I was an intern for him for quite some time. I think I was a junior in college when he got elected. And then my senior year, he said, do you want a job after you graduate? So I ended up working for Congressman Makeley for 6 years.
Wow.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, so let me ask you, the whole time, were you saying he's going to win, or were you thinking, no, he'll never win?
No, I never, ever thought he was going to win. I mean, I don't think anybody thought he was going to win, but...
What kept you going?
Well, because he was a brilliant campaigner, and if you don't know the story, he ran around the state of Rhode Island with a pig that he named Lester H. Pork to symbolize the pork spending that Congress engages in, which is wasteful spending. And I thought that was brilliant. It was this gentleman that no one knew how to pronounce his last name. And people would say, oh, yeah, that Matchley guy. And his name was pronounced Makeley. And the way you spell it, it looked like you pronounced it Matchley. So he was brilliant in that he needed to find some sort of a gimmick for people to understand sort of what he was all about and what his values were and what he espoused, and to remember him, something to remember him by. And the pig, people used to say all the time when we were on the campaign trail, "Oh yeah, you're the guy with the pig. That's the guy with the pig."
Did Lester the pig have clothes? I mean, like, did he change?
Lester the pig would go out on campaign, like on the campaign trail from time to time with Ron. So it was brilliant. And I always say to people that are running for Congress or running for any type of an office now in Rhode Island, you need a gimmick for something that people can sort of attach themselves to, or something that people would recognize who you are and what you're all about in a symbolic way. And that was Ron's sort of marketing, tool, was Lester H. Bork, the pig.
That was awesome.
It was all brilliant. It was brilliant.
So we share some common history.
Okay, we do?
Yep. What she's thinking, oh, what could that possibly be?
What did I do that I...
I started off college as a political science major, but our outcomes are a little different.
Okay. In that...
You know this story?
No.
So...
Did you back a candidate that lost?
Pardon me?
Did you back a candidate that
No,
lost?
no.
Okay.
God forbid.
I met an angel.
Okay. Elaborate.
First class I ever went to at school, and I was at BC, Boston College, so
Yes,
close.
the Eagles.
Yes. And my dad went to Providence College. And the first class I ever took there was my political science class. And it was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8:30.
That's rough.
So I get all set. I go to my first class, slept through the whole thing.
You were a stellar student.
Stellar. Wednesday rolls around, walk in, and I say to myself, I'm not gonna fall asleep. I'm gonna keep my eyes open and pay attention. Oh my God, Louise. I think I snored in that class.
Oh my gosh.
Friday comes. His name was Dr. Brule. He was the head of the political science department then. And before he starts class, you'll love this, Gail, I hear, Mr. Perenunzi, my office, 2:00 this afternoon.
Oh boy. You were in trouble.
Do you want to guess whether I was awake for that class? So I'm thinking between 9:00 and 2, I'm going to be expelled and thrown out of school. I mean, this is like what you're thinking.
Yeah.
I would have expelled you.
Exactly.
What's going through your head?
For sleeping. How laughable is that now? And it just goes to show you the mindset of people then and the mindset now.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I go up 2:00. Doesn't say hello, Mr. Perenunzi. Come into my office. He sees me in the hallway outside of his office and waves me in. Points to a chair. He's not talking. Points to a chair. So I'm really thinking, I'm done.
I'm out.
Next thing is going to, I don't know who you call to expel someone, but I was going to watch this whole thing. And then I'm thinking, I'll have to go home and face my mother. And I would have done anything to that guy.
To not have to face your mother.
To not have to face my mother. So he looks at me and he's boring into my eye. I mean, I guarantee you this wasn't the first time he was doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, who wants you to be a lawyer? I didn't even take a breath. And I said, my parents. He said, okay. Picks up the phone. No. He said, wait a minute. What do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
I said, I want to be a businessman, entrepreneur. And I thought it was really cool back then because that's when that entrepreneur title first came out. he said, okay. He picks up the phone. He calls the dean of the management school and says, Dean Newhouser? I mean, I'm still not believing any of this. Dean Newhouser. And I forget his first name, says, yes. I have a student here, a Mr. Piranunzi, that is never going to be a lawyer, but would like to be a businessman.
So he was your angel.
Monday, I started in the
Management school.
As a finance major.
That's a great story.
That man just...
He went over and above for you.
Over and above. I mean, you talk about a real academic. He was there to make sure, because this is what I think the goal of schools and academia should be, not programming. It should find the path that every student wants to take and then do everything in your power to help the kid find the truth and go for it. Give them the life skills to achieve it.
It's empowering the student.
Totally. And that's what Dr. Brule did for me.
So did you graduate as a management or finance major?
Yeah, I graduated as a finance calculus minor, where I got this huge award because... Is this too much about me? He's going to kill me later.
Fired.
Exactly. So
He's almost done.
Almost. I had to get special permission again from Dean Newhouser. I had to walk in there and say, yes, but I really want to finish my mathematical. I was doing theoretical calculus.
Oh, wow.
And I was explaining to Julius one answer to one problem was 3 to 5 blue books. And Julius says to me,
It's a blue book.
what's a blue book? Oh, that's right. I said, no computer.
We're dating ourselves. I
Yes.
remember what the blue books are. Yes.
My computer science was in this room in a basement with those papers that had green and you probably haven't even seen those with holes on the, hold on. What's it called? No, it was computer paper, but it was a green and then light white color, and it had all little holes on the side. It was crazy. So he said, okay, I had to take an extra workload. And I was in with all the scientists, pre-med guys, and
Smart folks.
the smart folks. And of course, I was this moron from the School of Management, which they thought was like a country club. And I always got the highest score on every test. And the professor, he would say, he'd get thrown out now, but back then he'd say, the moron did it again, because he knew.
That's funny.
He knew what they were all thinking. So,
Well, that professor should be commended for helping you find your passion.
I did go back once and thank him, brought him some stuff.
I wonder if he's still alive.
I wonder
Maybe
if
we
he's-
could talk to him.
I
We'll
know.
find him. Speaking of finding your passion, what drives you in everything you do? Because
Oh,
we'll talk
gosh.
about founders in philanthropy, partners in philanthropy later.
What drives me? Results drives me. I'm a person that is very results oriented. And I think what drives me too is trying to make my community a better place. And I'm also very family oriented. So family is really important to me. So I would say those 3 things.
And when did you figure those out? Or how did you figure them out?
Well, I'm from an Italian family, so family is everything. La familia is everything, and my parents instilled that into all of us. I'm one of 5 children, youngest of 5. So, that's always been sort of instilled in my siblings and myself for since we could breathe. So, results oriented. I have my own business, and if I don't deliver results for my clients, then I don't have a business. So, results, I think, have to do with having a strong work ethic. So I think that's really important. If you are, have your own business, you have to be a self-starter. You have to, really deliver, for your clients. And I try to do that with my client work. Motivate. Yes, exactly. And work as a team. And then, just trying to make my community a better place. Relative to that, I would say what we talked about earlier about trying to encourage people to be involved, aware, educated, engaged. Some people in my community would argue that I don't necessarily make my community a better place because I'm shedding a light on things that they just can't believe is happening necessarily in, a local community. But,
why are you rocking the boat?
Why am I rocking the boat? Bingo. And what I would say to that is, there's all different folks who have different opinions, and those opinions should be welcomed, because aren't we in the day and age of diversity? So, that would be my answer to your question.
Yeah, reading a couple articles, the media seems to paint you one way, and the other side of the media seems to paint you another way. So we're just here to ask questions and listen to your answers, and be unbiased as much as possible.
Relative to my political involvement from a town government perspective, there's always hit pieces, written about me all the time. And I say, bring it. If I think the media right now is very, very one-sided, locally, regionally, nationally. It's really sad, and it's very alarming and actually disturbing that we don't have a free and fair press right now. So, what I would say to that is by going on shows like yours, or by writing letters to the editor, or by speaking during public forum, during school committee meetings and town council meetings, I could get my point across unedited. And that's really important.
And it's all on the public record, too.
Exactly.
So we spoke on the phone before this interview, and you told me that out of college, you went and worked in Washington, D.C., which I think is a dream for a lot of people. What was that like? What did you do? And as someone who invites people onto shows and tries to get people for events, how do you were that person, spoiler. How do you best communicate with that person?
So yes, when Ron Makeley was elected to Congress, he said to me, I was, 23, 24 years old. And he said, Louise, you have, lived in Connecticut, you've lived in Rhode Island for a short period of time. You really need to sort of get a world view, so why don't you come and work for me in DC on Capitol Hill? And I think the thought of that terrified me, because, I grew up in a sheltered, area of New Haven, Connecticut, in the Italian section. And, I only knew a little bit about Rhode Island. And it was like, that town's going to gobble me up, if I moved to DC. It was the best thing really that ever happened to me. So I'm so appreciative and thankful to the congressman for encouraging me to do that. And I think my first week there, President Clinton was inaugurated. So I didn't necessarily support his candidacy, but I saw him being sworn in on January 20th, 1994 or 95. So it's something that I'll never ever forget. So it was an experience that's really indescribable. If you are someone who, really loves politics, it's definitely something that you have to do, even if it's for a short period of time. We played softball. Our office had a softball team that I organized, and we would play on the National Mall against other congressional offices. It was so much fun. It was great. And I'm super competitive. So, I loved beating, the other office teams. So it was just a wonderful, exhilarating experience. And, and then after sort of, I went back, came back to Rhode Island. because the congressman was running for governor, and he wanted some of us to be involved in that campaign and in that endeavor. So I came back to Rhode Island, and he ran for governor, and he lost, unfortunately. But you just chalk it up to an experience, and it was a great experience.
Did he end up winning eventually, or he decided to
So he
go
was
back to being a congressman?
he was a congressman for 6 years, and then he ran for governor, and he lost. And then after he lost the governor's race, he ended up becoming the president of Bryant University.
Oh,
Yes, for many years. I think over
It's-
25
it's a
years.
school in Smithfield.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yes. So, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Wow. And so, as the person on the phone who decides where the congressman went for events, what would influence that person to make them more likely to send the person to your event?
Sure. So my job was to field all the requests from community groups if they invited the congressman to speak at, a Chamber of Commerce event or the grand opening of a new church, or, they wanted him to speak on a specific topic that was maybe defense related because he was on the Armed Services Committee.
Oh,
So we would evaluate all of those invitations to see how many people that event was going to attract, what his role would be during the event. Was it just sort of a meet and greet? Was it going to be more of a front and center role, speaking to a large group of people? Is he walking in a parade? And obviously when you're a member of the House of Representatives on the federal level, you run every 2 years. So we would look at what would maximize, his reach. So if he was speaking to a group of 500, versus, going to a grand opening of a business that may attract 30 people in a small period of time, we had to look at and evaluate those invitations accordingly. And his district was District 1, Congressional District 1, so from Woonsocket to Aquidneck Island. So it was more the eastern part of the state, so the right hand of the state, if you're looking at a map. So, we would look at, how many times has he been to Woonsocket? How many times has he been to Portsmouth? How many times has he been to Bristol? So we would make sure, when we were evaluating these things, that he was getting to visit those cities and towns on a fairly regular basis.
so could you step back while you were doing that and say, oh my God, I'm doing exactly what I want to do? It was like a dream to you? Or were you so kind of overwhelmed you never had the luxury to go down either of those three thoughts?
I was just so grateful that I was working in Washington, D.C. as a political science, graduate. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. So it was, am I going to say at the time, was I aware, like self-aware enough to say, like, this is a dream come true? I would say that I was a pretty happy camper when I was living, in the DC area. And I got to drive into, the Capitol every single day for 2 years. I mean, I was in awe. I was just really grateful, I think, and thankful for that experience. It was awesome.
Was there any one thing in particular that you loved to do while you were there?
So the monuments were great to visit, and I used to love to go to the Georgetown Mall. I mean, I'm a big shopper, and the Georgetown Mall was like the coolest thing. It had the best stores. It was in a really sort of cool area of the DC area, in Georgetown. There were a lot of people walking around. It had great restaurants. And I loved Old Town Alexandria, Virginia. So that had great restaurants. Also, like, you can walk a lot of places. And I discovered a really beautiful Catholic church there. So I would go to church every Sunday in Alexandria, Virginia, because I lived in Alexandria. So yeah, I mean, it was just a great experience and a great place to live.
So I wanted to.
Wait a minute, did you meet your husband there?
I did not.
Okay, go ahead.
We'll get so. Usually we're not constrained by time, but since we are today, we're going to jump a little bit through
Okay.
stuff. Hopefully the next time we have you back, can go in depth on everything.
Sure.
But one more thing about Washington, D.C. Was there anything that you experienced in the halls of power of our capital that stood out to you or that shaped your political perspective now?
So during the time that I worked for the congressman, the Congress was considering NAFTA, the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement. And I just remember that our office received hundreds and hundreds of phone calls, sort of for and against. And it was really split down the middle, the way people wanted the congressman to vote. And I just thought, what an amazing thing that we get to express our views on a potential piece of legislation, one way or the other, and how fortunate we are to live in a free country where we can affect how our congressman is going to vote, one way or the other. And I just thought that that was an awesome responsibility for a congressman to have to weigh those things for or against. And that absolutely sticks out in my mind during that experience, that was a hot button issue in the 90s.
And how did he end up voting?
You know what? That's a great question. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. We're going back 30 years. So I honestly don't remember how he voted. That's a good question, Julius. I'm sorry. I should know the answer to that question.
No, we can find out too. I'll put it up somewhere.
Okay.
So how did Partners in Philanthropy come to be?
So Partners in Philanthropy is my business. I operate a full-service fundraising consulting business, and I help nonprofit organizations raise money. And you asked me earlier about sort of my passions and, what makes me tick. And, and then I said I'm a results-oriented person. And I have to say that I'm really gratified when I help nonprofits make their dreams come true. So Partners in Philanthropy came to be. I was working as a full-time fundraiser at the University of Rhode Island, and then I went to Women and Infants Hospital, and where I worked on a capital campaign. And I was blessed to have a daughter, Gabrielle, who was born with a congenital heart defect and heart disease. And Gabrielle just had a lot of needed a lot of medical attention. And at Women and Infants, I was working 40 hours a week. And it came to the point where I couldn't, bring Gabrielle to all of these appointments and fulfill my, job responsibilities, if you will, as a 40-hour-a-week employee at Women and Infants Hospital anymore. So this was late 2008, in the height of the economic downturn, if you remember 2008. Where at Women and Infants, I was helping to raise money for a new neonatal intensive care unit. So where premature babies, were coming in to Women and Infants and being, receiving, medical attention to make sure that they were going to make it, and that they were going to live. So, I decided that at the height of the economic downturn that I was going to start my own business. And my husband said, "Are you crazy? We're having a baby. This is our first child. We need the income." And I said, "You know what? I've been a fundraiser in Rhode Island for long enough, and I really think that I could utilize my reputation, my professionalism, people that I know to start my own business." So I went to Women and Infants and I told them that I was going to be leaving. And we were involved in a capital campaign to raise money for this new NICU, neonatal intensive care unit facility. And my boss said to me, "Louise, I respect what you're doing. We want to hire you as a consultant.
We want to be your first customer
to help us finish this campaign." So I was so grateful at that time to be able to, have Women and Infants as one of my first clients. So, and I hit the ground running. I had Women and Infants as a client, a charter school in Kingston as a client, and then a consortium of Catholic schools. And with those 3 clients, I was just about at my salary, for Women and Infants Hospital. So I have never looked back since the fall of 2008. I've never advertised for work. Everything has been through word of mouth. Actually, I take that back. I think in the very beginning, I put an ad into the Providence Business News. It was $1,500 about Partners in Philanthropy and what we do, and how we work with nonprofits. And that was a long time ago that I put that ad in the PBN. But, since then I've never proactively, taken out any ads. Everything has been through word of mouth, through my clients and the good work that I've, helped them accomplish.
Was Gabriella in the prenatal care unit, the
Yes.
new one or the old one?
The old one. So I had a unique perspective in being able to sell the new neonatal intensive care unit to prospective charitable investors. So that was a very unique experience for me.
And
How were you able to deal with an unimaginable loss?
I mean, the worst thing any parent will ever experience is the loss of a child. I mean, Gabrielle passed about 1 month shy of her 3rd birthday. So if you can imagine that, I mean, it is the most unimaginable thing in the world. It never leaves you. That loss never leaves. My husband, I mean, we were both devastated. This is not to minimize our loss, but, my husband was just in a state of depression for years. And, my attitude was that, Gabrielle's life had a purpose. We need to figure out how we're going to harness that grief into something positive. And we started a nonprofit in her name. After she passed, we started the Gabrielle Dinsmore Heart and Hope Fund, where we raised money to help other families who had kids with heart disease and heart defects. And we helped those families with financial assistance grants, going back and forth to either, Boston Children's Hospital or Connecticut Children's Medical Center or Yale New Haven's pediatric cardiology program. We just really felt strongly that Gabrielle's life was not in vain and that we wanted to honor her in a special, unique way. And we started the Gabrielle Dinsmore Heart and Hope Fund, which was a nonprofit, to help other kids and families who were dealing with the same situation we were. So it was just, an enormously gratifying endeavor, and trying to channel your grief in the most positive way that you could.
And the camps that the foundation funded seemed to make so many kids happy.
Yes, we funded a camp after Gabrielle. It was called Gabrielle's Heart Camp, where we partnered with Gabrielle's cardiologist at Hasbro Children's Hospital. And Gabrielle was a patient of Dr. Lloyd Fite, who was a cardiologist, and he had a dream for a long time to start a camp for kids with heart disease and heart defects. And he just didn't know how to go about doing it. And I said to him, have you met me? This is what I do. Like, I organize and I raise money. So let's work together and let's partner and let's make your vision of this heart camp for kids a reality. And I said to him, you can talk to some of the parents of some of your patients. We can really make this a unique experience. And Gabrielle's Heart Camp came to be. We had Gabrielle's Heart Camp for a number of years. We fundraised. We had galas. We raised money through grant applications, and we raised a ton of money for our mission and for camp. So fast forward a little bit, that was a really successful endeavor. And then after Gabrielle passed, my husband needed a kidney transplant. And I said, I'm going to get tested to be a potential donor for him. And I ended up, donating a kidney so he could get a kidney. We were in a swap. And at that same time, we were fostering a young boy, and we were fostering to adopt him. So I had all of these things going on simultaneously in my life, in my husband's life. And I just, thought to myself, I cannot run this nonprofit every day of my life. I have to give our foster child, our, adoptive child, an opportunity to have my full attention. So we closed our nonprofit organization and we transferred all of the assets to the Rhode Island Foundation. So there are 4 hospitals in New England. Their pediatric cardiology programs receive a grant from our fund, if you will, to Yale New Haven, Connecticut Children's Medical Center, Hasbro Children's Hospital, and Boston Children's Hospital's cardiology programs for kids. So it just, makes us feel really great. And those funds are in Gabrielle's name. So her memory, her legacy will be in perpetuity. And that's really gratifying for my husband and myself.
So did you end up adopting the son you were fostering?
We did. He came into our home. We were getting trained to be a foster family, foster parents. So we went through training for a number of months, and then we got certified by the state through DCYF. And so we ended up getting a call from DCYF on, I think, at 3:00 on a Wednesday. And they said, we have a young boy. He's 17 months old. Would you and your husband like to foster him? And I said, like today? And they said, yeah, like tonight. Like we're ready he's with another foster family. It didn't work out, and you have to decide like right now. And my husband and I were in the car, and I looked at him and I said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know if I'm ready. And he said, I'm not sure we're going to get another opportunity to foster. Because lots of times when you're a potential foster family, there are older kids that are like 10, 11 in their teens. There aren't, kids 17 months old. So I said, okay, let's do this. So 3 hours later, our son was brought to our home by a DCYF worker. And so we fostered him for a number of over a year and a half. And then we adopted him. So he's legally our son. So Giovanni is his name. And he's just the light of our life.
And how old is he now?
He's 7. No, I'm sorry. He's 11, going on 30.
I think I've met Giovanni once.
Oh, you probably have.
I think I met him once. Yeah, he seems like an incredibly nice kid.
He's a great kid, a lot of manners. So we try to teach him how to be a good person and, have manners and respect.
As it should be.
Yes.
You have something to say? Sorry, I've been asking a lot of questions.
2 things. Being able to turn around that unimaginable loss and feeling like it's a gift, which is what we talk about all the time. There's no time for any victim language or feelings.
Mm-hmm.
When you really believe your world is created by you, everyone in it is playing a role.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And a lot of times, the harder the role, the more that soul has to love you. So, how much of that love would you say motivates you?
I mean, it's really the reason why I get up in the morning is that I will always be Gabrielle's mother. Whether she's here physically in body or not. So it motivates me tremendously that I want to be, I want her to be proud of her mother. And that's it. I guess it gets back to your earlier question, sort of what fuels you. So I do think that fuels me, on a day-to-day basis. And then, being a good role model for Giovanni, as well, to be kind, to be involved, to be engaged, to be a good person. So I think that's really important, just to be a good human being.
So for other people who are going through this right now, if there's one thing you could say to them, what would it be?
Oh, gosh.
Or a couple,
Can I add to that question?
Of course.
I don't know if you can remember, but if you could, can you remember the moment when you decided to channel the grief into loss? What was that moment? I mean, excuse me, the grief into when you
Something
made the
positive.
Something positive. Thank you.
So Gabrielle passed on March 31st, 2010. And it was the time when the Warwick Mall was flooding, if you remember that. So like we didn't even know that was happening. We were just in our own world at the hospital for many weeks with her. I wasn't home for a long time. So I would say about 3 months later, I just said to myself, I cannot allow myself to just be in a constant state of pain and sadness. And I said, God gave me a talent, and my talent is my voice and my fundraising profession. And I need to use my voice and my fundraising skills to harness my grief and to turn it around, to help other families who went through the same thing that my husband and I went through with our daughter, and make their lives a little easier, a little better. And that's how that's what fueled me at that point. And so, we applied you have to apply to the IRS to be a 501c3. So we filled out our application. Our application was approved in record time. We put together a board of directors, And that's what fueled, me. That's what helped me channel my grief. It did not help my husband channel his grief because that experience was just a constant reminder of our loss. So even though it was a positive thing for me, it wasn't necessarily a super positive thing for him. It was, it just like, it was really hard for him just to accept like our life and our reality without her. And I would say, getting back to your question, Michael, I would just say you have to find because life throws a lot of curveballs your way. And I've had a number of curveballs thrown my way that have been, not great things, that have been unimaginable loss. That I really feel that your life is a test, right? And how are you going to be tested? How are you going to come through those dark times? Are you going to come through those dark times getting through it? Or are you going to just sink to the bottom of the ocean? And that's just not in my DNA, And I felt really strongly that my daughter was a fighter. She fought to the end, and that I was not going to go down without a fight, for my life. And that I really wanted Gabrielle to be proud of me. And I just kept on saying to myself, Gabrielle would not want you to be miserable for the rest of your life. She would want you to try to find purpose. And I found purpose in starting the nonprofit because I wanted her life to have a purpose. And then I found purpose, just in using sort of her. She was a very strong little girl, and I just used her strength to fuel me.
Oh, I wonder where she got her strength from.
She was great.
Two things. I hope your husband got through the depression and
He did.
is in a better place now. And the second thing is people like you are so inspirational that you can sit here and talk about this, A, and B, that you're doing what you're doing is really incredible. So,
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
so nice. Thank you.
Let me get this out of the way first because I think it's a fun question.
Okay.
We have a tradition on this show, and you'll be a part of it in a minute.
Okay.
Every guest that comes on leaves a question for the following guest, not knowing who they're going to be.
Oh, wow.
Or what their deal is. So our previous guest was Dr. Dennis Snyder, who also runs a nonprofit. I think
Okay.
you would enjoy. I might send you his episode.
Okay.
His question was this, which I really like. You have 1 hour left. In fact, now it's 59 minutes and 45 seconds. What are you going to do?
I have 1 hour left. Oh my gosh. Putting me on the spot here, Julius.
No, Dr. Snyder did.
Oh, Dr. Snyder, you're putting me on the spot. I mean, this doesn't sound so profound, honestly. Of course, I would pray to ask God to forgive me of my sins. And I think I would try to have the best Italian meal ever before I died. So
That's a really good way to go.
I'm Italian and I love to eat. So, and I love good food. So I think that's what I would do for
We're
that.
the same in that respect.
1 hour. I would, I don't know, drive somewhere because I'm not a good cook. I would drive somewhere quickly and try to get a good meal.
Oh my goodness, we are such foodies. Julius and his mom don't look it, but I do.
You look great.
No,
So does that mean I have to leave a question for the next guest?
Yes.
Do I have to do that right now?
No.
okay.
We'll do that at
Oh
the
my
end.
gosh.
Yeah, no worries. No
It's
worries.
going to be
Not
really
right now.
hard. Okay.
Maybe we should do that. Maybe we should play the video of the person saying it. That might be even more fun. Well, maybe we'll do that.
Okay.
That would be a really fun thing to do. So what was it like being does you said his name was Ben? Sorry, your son's name.
Oh, Giovanni.
Giovanni.
What
Ben.
am I talking about?
Kind of
Ben?
Italian are you?
I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Does Giovanni know he's adopted?
He does. Yes, he does. Yes. I mean, we're transparent with him about all of that. His biological dad has since passed away. So yes, he knows he's adopted. Yes.
And how did he?
How does that fit into the dynamics of your family?
We don't really talk about it much.
Right.
He's just ours.
Yeah.
I mean, he's loved. He's, he's a part of the Dinsmore family, So my maiden name is Rosarbo, and he has lots of cousins, and, he's part of the Rosarbo family, the Dinsmore family. So he takes part in all of our traditions. So it's a non-issue. I mean, we don't bring it up, and we make him. He feels like he is our biological child, and as it should be.
Yeah.
Yes.
As someone who's half Italian, I have nothing against any other ethnicity, but I'm very proud to call myself an Italian. I absolutely
too.
love it. So
Me too.
it's a big part of our identity.
That's
for
right.
Some reason.
I
It's how
agree.
we're raised.
And his non-Italian mother is an incredible Italian cook.
His non-Italian mother.
Is an incredible Italian cook.
Really? Well, she's going to have to share some recipes with me, because my mother would not allow me in the kitchen when I was a kid, because that was her thing. That was her gig. So if people say, oh, Louise, you should probably, know how to make the best sauce. We say sauce in Connecticut. We don't say gravy like you guys say in Rhode Island. Do you know how to make the best sauce? You know how to make the best sauce. And I said, no, my mother never really allowed us in the kitchen. That was that was her thing. That was her domain. So
the only thing that I cook is my mom's sauce.
really?
And meatballs.
This is an interesting story, that my mother taught my husband how to make her sauce and her meatballs, but she would not, really sort of didn't go there with me. So my husband, Jeff, will make her eggplant parm was to die for. So it's her eggplant and her marinade and we made sauce with a dry sausage base, or she did. So she taught him how to make that sauce too. So.
And did she make meatballs?
Oh yeah. So she taught Jeff how to make meatballs too.
Does Jeff do a good job?
He does a phenomenal job.
Oh, excellent. That's
So
good to hear.
my mother's name was Florence. Her nickname was Flossie. So I'll say to him all the time, "Hon, can you make Flossie sauce?" Yes.
Somehow, somewhere in the logical scheme of things, I would know your mother's name was Flossie.
She was a pistol. A very wise woman.
Speaking of a pistol, let's talk about Nicole Solis.
I would love to talk about Nicole Solis, a warrior.
Your upcoming event
Yes.
this Friday. For anyone who's interested, it will be at the
Richmond Senior Center, 1168 Main Street. It's on the second floor of the police station. That was done by design, because when Nicole speaks, lots of times there will be protesters out in front of the areas or the buildings where she speaks. So
I'm in for a treat this Friday.
you may be. I mean, I don't anticipate anything.
That'd be great. Bring it on.
Any protesters, but I mean, you never know. So I said earlier that it's important to be involved and engaged in local government and town council meetings, city council meetings, go to school committee meetings. So I have been engaged to the point where I felt really strongly that, you should try to be engaged to try to affect change. And another resident of Richmond, Rhode Island, a gentleman by the name of Clay Johnson, who's a fiscal conservative like myself, decided that we were going to form a political action committee after, these school budgets keep getting passed every year over and over and over again, and people just pass them without any regard for the taxpayer's ability to pay. And, I said to myself a couple of years ago, I'm really going to start organizing to start opposing these school budgets just being passed blindly. So in 2022, we defeated the school budget not once, but twice in Charahoe, which is like unheard of. So Clay and I decided that we were going to formalize sort of our efforts, and we formed a political action committee called the Charahoe Forgotten Taxpayers. And Charahoe is a short for the three towns that make up our school district. So Charlestown, Richmond, and Hopkinton. So it's sort of the beginning of those three towns' names, put into Charahoe. So we live in the Charahoe area. So we formed this political action committee called the Charahoe Forgotten Taxpayers. And we're going to support, issues of importance to us, which is fiscal responsibility and leading grassroots efforts to empower people to, oppose or, speak out either for or against town budgets and school budgets. Typically it's against, not for, but typically we're speaking out against it because we think the spending is completely irresponsible. So we've decided that we're going to do maybe some speaker series, like a speaker series, and have speakers come in from time to time. So who better than to ask Nicole Solis, who is a warrior mother from South Kingstown, who was basically sued. Not basically, she was sued by the NEA, the teachers union, and the South Kingstown School District for asking questions about what her kindergarten daughter was going to be learning in kindergarten, because her daughter was about to go into kindergarten in South Kingstown. And she asked to be given information about the curriculum. And they said, well, you submit a public records request. And she kept submitting them. And she wasn't, she was getting the runaround. And so her story is a really powerful, important story that we are the taxpayers. We pay for the school to exist, for school systems to exist. We pay teachers. We pay the bill for the lights to be on and the lawyers to represent the school and, the people to clean the classrooms. And we have every right as taxpayers to ask questions. Well, Nicole was asking questions, and she was, got her hand slapped, if you will, with a lawsuit by the teachers union. And she was bullied and harassed by the teachers union for asking questions. So she's going to be our guest speaker on Friday night, September 22nd at the Richmond Senior Center. And she's going to, at 6:30, and she's going to share her story about what happened to her. And the title of our talk is going to be, what you should know about what's happening in your school district and what you can do about it. So I think that's really important. And she's just the perfect person for our inaugural, speaker.
And while this show doesn't take political sides, there is a link in the description to this event. Regardless of your political opinion, it's always great to go and with an open mind and listen to people speak.
So if I can plug it, our website is www.forgottentaxpayers with an S, www.forgottentaxpayers.com. You could see our flyer on the website, and you can register for tickets, and you could see our mission. And there's some letters to the editor on there that I've written. And I will say that my letters to the editor, holds nothing back.
I haven't read them yet, but I'm sure they're a very good read. And there's also a link to Louise's website for Partners in Philanthropy if you run a nonprofit or need fundraising consulting.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, why fundraising? How did you figure out that was the weapon, or I shouldn't say weapon. How did you figure out that was the gift that God gave you, like you put it earlier?
What a good question, Julius. So we talked earlier about Ron Makeley, and when Ron was running for governor, he ended up running for governor. He was in Congress for 6 years. And then, he had a young family at the time, and I think he really wanted to get back to being in Rhode Island full time. Because, when you're a member of Congress, you have to go to D.C., 3 or 4 days a week, and you're away from your family. So he wanted to come back and be with his family. And during the campaign for governor, we had a number of fundraisers. So then the Vice President Dan Quayle came into Rhode Island for a fundraiser to sort of, pitch for Ron being governor. And I was exposed to a lot of different fundraising events, if you will. And I thought, isn't this interesting that, in order to do anything, if you want to run for public office, you have to have the money to get your message out. So Ron ended up losing the campaign for governor. And I thought to myself, well, this was interesting, all these fundraisers. I think maybe, I was looking for my career. And I didn't want my career to be, revolved around whether someone lost or won an election. Because what if I went to go work for another elected official and they lost, and then I would start all over again? So I said, maybe I need to do something that's a little bit more stable, if you will. So I ended up doing some informational interviewing, and I met with a gentleman. His name was Lou Fasano. And Lou was a supporter of Congressman Makeley during the campaign. And he said, Louise, I'm on the board of the Rhode Island School of Design. They're looking for a fundraiser in the annual giving department. And I think you'd be really good. Your personality would really suit that job. So, would you mind if I passed your name along to the VP of fundraising at RISD? And I said, that'd be great. And so he did. I submitted my, resume, and I got the job. And what a great first fundraising job it was, because RISD alumni are the most interesting people on the planet. And I got to meet some of the most interesting people and got to travel all over the country to meet graphic designers and industrial designers and architects and illustrators and film and video majors. And it was just an incredible experience. So I worked at RISD for 5 years, and I just found that it was a passion, just like having a conversation with someone and asking them to support your school or your your endeavor. So, and I found that I was like pretty good at it. So it's been my career since 1994.
You're being very modest with pretty good at it. How much did you help RISD raise?
Well, I mean, at the time that I worked at RISD, they were raising, from an annual giving perspective, my job title was Director of Annual Giving. They were raising about $365,000 a year, which was not a lot of money at the time, being the premier, art and design school in the world, but they didn't have a culture of asking people for money. And then I worked there for 5 years, and we doubled the amount of money that was taken in for annual giving at the end of my tenure at RISD. So I doubled what they were raising in 5 years. So, but I mean, I've raised a lot of money for a lot of different organizations over the years. And you had asked me, I think in our sort of pre-interview, how much have you raised? I mean, I don't have a concrete number, but it's many millions of dollars. I mean, I don't know. I can't even venture a guess, but I think the most gratifying thing for me as a professional fundraiser is I can drive around the state of Rhode Island and say, I had a hand in building that building. So the Ryan Center at URI was one of my projects.
That was the library was $5 million. The Ryan Center was?
The Ryan Center project was an $80 million building. So at URI. Providence Public Library just had a major renovation. So I helped raise money for that renovation to happen. The Johnny Cake Center in Wakefield just bought a building and they renovated it. So they moved their food pantry to make, a bigger food pantry. And every time I drive by that building, I say, oh my goodness, like it's just the most gratifying thing to say. Like I helped make that happen, So it's just a very rewarding job, what I do. And I love it.
The last question we always ask, because we're about to run out of time, to everyone is, but I'm rephrasing it. If you were tasked with giving the college commencement address to your great-grandchild, what would you say to them? They're about to embark on the journey of real life.
So I would say to that in that commencement address is find your passion, because that's when your life will be as meaningful as possible, and live that passion every single day.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
We'd
you.
love to have you back at some point, too, for maybe a little longer.
Would love it.
Or a little.
Thank you.
You are infectious.
Oh,
Louise.
thank you.
Amazing.
That's so nice.
Amazing,
Thanks, Michael.
amazing.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back to our usual schedule and be around at 8 o'clock live. And we also have the full episode of someone Louise knows, Tudzinski, who's a RISD alum, will be coming out soon with some pictures and other things. So please stay tuned for that. Okie doke, everyone. Have a good night. See you soon.
Thank you.